Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Payne and Drain Show following another chaotic week of Lions training camp, a QB2 battle that has suddenly taken a surprising turn, a preseason game that unfortunately didn't get finished, and of course, joint practices this week with the Miami Dolphins that are sure to bring up a lot of fun storylines as well. So welcome into the program. My name is Zach Payne. I am one part of this podcast, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Alex Drain. And Alex, how are we doing today?
Pretty good. The weather is finally cooling off a little bit. We've been in the high 80s, low 90s here in southeast Michigan. It's been one of the hottest summers I can remember. Last week has just been sweltering, but today it's dipped down a little bit. Got some rain last night, so happy about that. I also wanted to give a shout out. I was at a work event on Sunday and meeting some readers and fans, so to speak, and there was one person there who identified himself as a listener of this program. So, big shout out to him. I don't remember the name, unfortunately, but you know who you are, and we appreciate the listen.
That's unbelievable. First in-person fan interaction, and you don't even remember the name.
Well, he came up to me right at the end, and I don't even remember if he said he might have said the name at the start, and then came back as he was going out and said it. So yeah, whatever. But
all right, well, here you've heard it here first. Alex doesn't care about the fans that much. So getting into this week's episode, of course, before we get into it, make sure to follow the show on social media. You can find me on Twitter at ZachPayne41, Alex at Alex_Drain, the show at Payne and Drain. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe, follow us, and leave a review on podcasting platforms. So today we have to start out with a preseason recap. It's been almost a week since last Friday's preseason game, but we do have to talk about what happened in Atlanta, starting with the fact that, like I said, the game actually was not finished because of a scary situation with defensive back Maurice Norris, who in an attempt to make a tackle, a routine tackle, his head gets snapped back, causing a significant concussion and resulting in him having to be taken off the field in an ambulance. And both teams, it was kind of weird how it played out, where the teams had to take a snap and the Falcons were holding the ball and they had to protest the rest of the game. And it took 10 minutes before the league called down. It was like, okay, this game won't continue because the teams aren't going to play. But massive respect to both the Falcons and Lions for doing that, because it's the preseason. It doesn't matter that much. And so when something significant like that happens, it is best to just not worry about playing the rest of the game. But thankfully, we know that Maurice Norris is seemingly relatively okay. He obviously, like I said, has a concussion. I think Dan Campbell said he was going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So the fact that he's not out for a significant amount of time is, quite frankly, a miracle.
well, that's sort of the interesting nature of that injury, right? It's either you're paralyzed or you're kind of okay, and there isn't, it's not like a broken leg where there's a healing process and something very structural. It's either the most serious thing that can ever happen on a football field, or kind of let off the hook a little bit. So just great news that we avoided the worst case, because in the moment it looked really bad and it was really a frightening situation. The reason that they stopped that game, I don't think I'd ever seen that before, with the just standing there running the clock, and it took a little bit to figure out what was going on. I don't know why the league took as long as they did to intervene. I imagine there were some phone calls, but the teams weren't going to play, so wrap it up. But unfortunate we didn't get the full game, but it was paused for the right reasons. And at the end of the day, the fourth quarter of a game like that is not the most exciting portion of the game anyway.
Yeah, how much more of the third stringers did you really need to see?
Right.
And we did, as we could get into the game a little bit here to start off with, we did get a significant development in the backup quarterback race, because Hendon Hooker really struggled once again in a game setting. I know that there's been a bit of a drumbeat for him having an improved camp, but then the reports, every time, or through both of these games so far, all the beat reporters are yeah, don't know what happened, but Hooker just is not looking like an NFL level quarterback at this point in time. Kyle Allen, on the other hand, had a much better performance than that dreaded Hall of Fame game, and he looked quite good, actually. He made some really good throws. He showed some good composure in the pocket, and he really separated himself, at least for the time being, as probably the front runner for the backup job. What did you see? Let's start with Hendon Hooker first. What stood out to you about his performance?
My biggest question with him right now is the indecisiveness. And that's where I want to look into the All 22 a little bit just to kind of get a sense of what he's looking at because he just holds the ball for a long period of time. And it's become a problem here in the preseason with the Lions' second, third team offensive lines not being particularly good. And so he's getting pressure. But a lack of quick decisions is making those pressures worse. And then you've got the inability to squeeze the ball. And he's putting it on the ground too much. I mean, just two more fumbles in this game. It just can't happen. Ball security is priority number one. But to me, it all goes back to the fact that he takes it and he stands there and he's looking. And there's just not a lot of quick decisions, not a lot of really direct, quick routes off the ball. I don't know how much of it is the coordinators not giving him quick options and how much of it is just the inability to really pull the trigger right now. But it's pretty stark. And then you see Kyle Allen come into this game, and he was way better. And the last game, we talked about how much Allen struggled. He was much better than that game, and he was much better than Hooker. And at the moment, I think he has to be the favorite at quarterback, too. And that puts the Lions in a really interesting bind with Hendon Hooker's draft position and the possibility of if he didn't make the team. Like, they would really prefer Hooker to be QB2, but it's just really hard to make that argument right now.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that stood out for me was Hooker really does not look beyond his first read very often, and that can have some disastrous consequences. I think, namely, we talked last week about how we were frustrated with how much Craig Reynolds was playing. Well, Craig Reynolds ends up almost he gets demolished on a play, gets hurt for a few plays on a hospital pass by Hooker. And I was looking at this play back on the All-22, and Hooker's body the entire way is just staring at Reynolds. And the Falcons were in a 5-2 front, and they were running cover one, so just a single deep safety. And that safety just takes one look at Hooker. He's like, oh, you're going to throw the wheel route to the running back. And he almost immediately is able to just drive on that ball. Hooker waits too long to throw it after, he waited for, so TeSlaa was running a pick play on that snap, and he waited to visually confirm that the linebacker ran into TeSlaa before committing to the throw, and then he puts too much loft on it after he's already telegraphed he's going to throw it, and then Reynolds just gets blown up as a result. So, and there was numerous examples throughout the game where it's either he throws his first read or he's scrambling, and I haven't seen an ability to progress through his reads. I haven't seen an ability to really anticipate windows, or honestly, even there's a difference between Jared Goff can predetermine throws sometimes because he does a lot of his work before the play in reading the defense and being like, okay, this is the coverage. This is the route combinations on this play. I know that this guy's going to be open in 2 seconds, whatever. Hooker, the difference is he will predetermine he's throwing to a guy just because that's his first read. And then if it's not open, he'll react later, and then he'll scramble because he's a very reactive quarterback, and he just is not very good at it. And that's not to say Kyle Allen is good at anticipating windows either, but Hooker really struggles in that department.
Right, and the frustrating part about it is we go back to a couple weeks ago when we were doing the pre-camp or at the start of camp episode. We talked about what do we want to see from Hooker, and it was not to be relying on the scrambling too much, and that was really all we saw him do last preseason. It doesn't really feel like that's changed at all. He's still relying on the scramble, and it doesn't really feel like there's been a ton of improvement in his game, and maybe he has been better in practices. I think we've heard some better things, but the games are important too, and those situations are where you get a taste of real action because practices, you know things about your own defense. They know things about you, obviously, but to go out there against a different defense, a team you haven't seen before, it just feels a little deer in the headlights right now. And he's a third-year player. Obviously, he missed the first year with the injury, but it just kind of feels stagnant right now. And when you have Kyle Allen come into the game and he immediately uncorks a bomb down the field and he has a couple touchdowns and moves the offense much better, the pressure's on. And I don't think it makes a ton of sense for the Lions to keep a third quarterback, to be honest. The reason you would be doing it if Hooker is QB3 is simply because of his draft position. I mean, if his name was Teddy Bridgewater and he was playing like that, there wouldn't, I think, be any real discussion about keeping quarterback 3. But it's about the amount of capital the Lions have invested in him that would give him a shot to survive in that situation. But he's got to be feeling the heat now. And this game upcoming this weekend against the Dolphins feels like really a turning point moment in his career for the Lions. He needs to dig in and show he deserves a spot on this roster, because right now it doesn't really feel like he does.
Yeah, and at the time of recording this, we're just over 3 weeks away from the start of the regular season. So he's really got the last couple weeks of camp here and 2 preseason games to just show something. If he shows any modicum of development, he'll be QB2 and Kyle Allen will be on the practice squad for a rainy day. I do wonder if we get into a situation where Hooker is technically the backup, but if Goff was to go down for a significant amount of time, then Allen would be brought up from the practice squad and actually be the second quarterback, but they have to keep Hooker on the roster because he would get claimed immediately.
It's a possibility of that. You just hope Goff doesn't get hurt in a game where it's up for grabs in the fourth quarter, is all I'll say about that strategy.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, even if Kyle Allen is what he was in that preseason, like the Lions are going to be cooked without Jared Goff anyways. So I guess like
that is fair.
It's one of these weird conversations where it's like, yeah, you want to make sure you have the best QB2 possible, but also recognizing that if your QB2 is playing, you're in a lot of trouble. This isn't going to be a Tyler Huntley Pro Bowl situation with the Ravens from a few years ago. So definitely was discouraged. The other thing too I want to mention is, Hendon, is Hooker allergic to sliding? Like, what is the deal with the fact that every single time he scrambles, there was a 3rd and 10 earlier in the game. It was after the first fumble, but he scrambles to his right, rolls out, picks up the first down, and he has like 3 seconds while he's running to either slide or just duck out of bounds. And instead he runs straight into the defender that TeSlaa was blocking for some reason. I really do not understand his aversion to saving himself.
It's something you have to learn if you want to play in the NFL. I mean, obviously you want to get extra yards and everything when you are a backup quarterback, but there has to be that self-preservationist aspect. And it's even worse to be seeking contact when you're not holding onto the ball. It's coming out way too quickly at the moment without, great hits or anything to jar it free. So it's just been a bad combination, but I was glad to see the performance of Kyle Allen because the Lions needed a little bit of a spark. You wanted to see the wide receivers get an opportunity to really show what they could do. And once he came in, they did. And I was, really thankful for that.
Yeah, and, speaking of that, you talked about the bomb that Kyle Allen had on his first play where he has 2 checkdowns that are wide open that you would expect a QB to be like, okay, I have an open guy, let me throw it there. But Allen correctly recognizes that Jackson Meeks is running at a full sprint, and neither of the Falcons' defensive backs that were deep downfield had really started getting into getting their feet moving. Like they still didn't have their hips turned. They were still standing pretty still. He said, you know what? He's got a step. I'm going to give him a chance. And the official on that play had near perfect coverage, but had nearly hit Meeks and ruined that. But it was a great play. And then 2 plays later, same thing, a little pick route for TeSlaa to get on the wheel and get a chance. And he just puts it in a position where it's like, you know what? My guy has a step. Let me give him a shot. And he had the trust in his receivers to go up and win their battles. And they did. And shout out to TeSlaa too. That was a great grab.
Oh yeah. The Meeks, bomb, that was quite something because in that situation, you're kind of sitting there through, what was it, probably 6 quarters of preseason football, 5.5, something like that. There really hadn't been any signs of life that the Lions offense and in these sorts of games was capable of that. And then all of a sudden he hits Meeks and you're like, whoa, what was that? And then from there, it really just kind of clicked for a little bit. And Meeks had a nice game. He also had a touchdown outside of the bomb. He's probably receiver 6 on the team at the moment.
Yeah.
Patrick is 3, TeSlaa 4, Love at 5, and then Meeks 6. So
No, Love it
we
would be
also
6 because you're Raymond.
Love it's Raymond, right? So yeah, Meeks would be 7 then in that situation. So, but he's acquitted himself well. I also thought that like Ronnie Bell, an old Michigan guy, had a couple catches in that game. Like it was a nice night for the receivers overall. TeSlaa's getting most of the coverage. I don't know if you saw this tweet today from. Let me pull it up here. Nick Bumgardner. He was at the joint practices with the Dolphins today. The only route runners I've seen earn trust from Jared Goff faster than Isaac TeSlaa are Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta.
Yeah, I mean, TeSlaa's going to have a role this year. He might not, like, I know we talked last week about what are the chances he overtakes Tim Patrick by the end of the year. Even if that doesn't happen, I think it's the same. But like Khalif Raymond has had a role for years as wide receiver 4. TeSlaa is going to be involved. Like he's going to have specific packages that are designed for him because he's just been too good.
Yeah, I mean the hype is building, which I predicted last week, given the fan favorite and all that stuff. But also the chance of him passing Patrick. We talked about it last week. I was fairly dismissive. That chance is inching up for me a little bit. Starting to believe more and more that it's a possibility because he really does look ready to play. And obviously, we need to see him more against starting DBs. But even just as a rotational wide receiver, like you mentioned, mix in for 10, 12 plays, get a catch or two in a game, I think that's quite possible at the moment with more growth as the season goes along. You just can't keep him on the bench at the moment. He's acquitting himself too well. The hands look really good. He's been really reliable in that aspect, which is a necessity to earn playing time. So if he keeps playing this way, he's going to get snaps in the regular season. And at the moment, of all of these risky Holmes development picks, this one is by far the quickest to get on the field and convert on some of that upside swing.
Well, and the other necessity too, like obviously hands for a wide receiver, but for the Lions specifically, it's blocking. And TeSlaa has routinely been one of the best blockers out of like all these wide receivers, and the tape he's putting out, not just at receiver, like but as a blocker and at gunner as well. He's been a factor in multiple facets of the game. So I I'm curious to see what the full scope of his role is going to be in the regular season. Is it going to be 5 to 10 snaps a game plus maybe some special teams reps? Like, I don't know what that's going to look like. But what I do know is that of all the project picks, he definitely, like you said, has shown the most flashes so far. And so the hype is going to continue to get out of hand. I know joint practices today, the Lions really took it to the Dolphins a little bit, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Another one of these project players that is gaining not necessarily traction, but just a little bit more spotlight, and he's continuing to grow, is left tackle Giovanni Manu. A story came out from Colton Pouncey in The Athletic, a great story about how Taylor Decker has started mentoring Manu, and it really did show Decker in a different light that I'm starting to wonder if like Decker will be a coach after his playing career is done, because the way he speaks about not just the city of Detroit and the team, but his role on it and as a leader and as a mentor, and then talking about Manu and helping him along, it really does show a level of I know it's weird to say maturity for a veteran player, but just that he's so self-aware of the fact that he's not going to play forever, and that he's so committed to this city that he's willing to help mentor the next generation of this offensive line to make sure that when he's gone, the Lions are still set up.
Yeah, that was a nice article. I definitely recommend people to check it out. There was a tweet thread of 2 clip videos from Nate Tice either yesterday or today. I looked at it just before when I was this taping when I was getting my notes together, but he had a bunch of snaps from Manu clipped. There was one tweet that had pass pro clips. There was another that had run game clips. I'm pretty encouraged overall looking at those. He moves really, really well for a big guy. I mean, I actually sat there watching and I was like, does he need to get a little bit bigger? because, and then I pull up the roster and I'm like, this is 6'7", 350, but he moves really well. And at this point, I'm wanting him to play bigger. That's my biggest thing looking at these clips is that like his movement's really good, or especially for a guy that size. He's staying in front of his defenders, which you want to see, but he's still giving up a little bit of ground. His hands need improvement. He's playing a little upright. And it just needs to focus on just getting a little meaner instead of guiding the defender, really trying to push back and just show us a couple pancakes, especially in the run game, right? We don't always want pancakes. You also want your linemen to be able to move on from one block to the next one, but just occasionally show a little bit of aggression. That's what I'd like to see from him. But the fact he was staying in front of the defenders was good to see, and it's coming along. He was matched up against Pierce in that game.
Yep.
I think Arnold Ebiketie as well. So those are some guys that definitely have some real ability. And overall, it feels a year away at least, but it's coming along. And I think it's encouraging progress so far. It's still in the developmental stage, but you're seeing some of that improvement. And particularly in this game, compared to the right tackle, who I believe was name was Mason Miller, I think was his name. That was a train wreck, and that was a big problem for the quarterbacks. And Manu was way better than that. So we get that contrast between a guy who's just way in over his head and is never going to be something, and someone that could mostly hang in there in this sort of format.
Yeah, Ebiketie was causing a lot of trouble for the Lions offensive line in that first half. And I think that my biggest takeaway from Manu is that pad level more so than the need to like I understand wanting to get meaner, watch some more Penei Sewell tape, but Manu is almost too big for his own good, that he's so tall that he has to get even lower than most players would have to, and especially against some of these smaller, speedier edge rushers. It must have been Pierce on one rep where he just beats Manu to the outside, and Allen makes a good throw under pressure and ends up drawing the roughing the passer. But Manu he got beat to the outside on that with a simple just rip to the outside. And then there was the bomb that Allen threw on one of the first plays where he makes that throw as Manu is getting beat to the inside and allowing a QB hit as well. So it's definitely coming along, but when it's one of those things where I can watch it at a distance and be like, oh yeah, Manu looks like pretty good. And then when I watch it back on the All-22, I'm like, oh, well, he's still getting beat a decent amount. So still a lot of room to go. I think if he can be the third, well, maybe not the third tackle, but like the primary backup left tackle, so that Skipper can just be like the primary backup right tackle or something next year. And then 2 years from now, that's when we'll probably have another conversation about Taylor Decker and be like, okay, is it time for Manu to take over? But it's a long-term project, so the Lions have time here.
Yeah, and it wasn't a particularly great game for the rest of the offensive line. So just to get that little bit from Manu was nice to see. Tate Ratledge did play a little bit, seemed pretty good in my viewing. It wasn't that much. The rest of the twos and threes, not great, but also Dan Skipper was not available. That's a guy we've seen play, so you're getting more towards practice squad kind of guys, and no one in the NFL has great offensive line depth.
Exactly. And so Tate Ratledge, as you mentioned, he had that one play where he tossed a defender to the ground and opened up a running lane for Craig Reynolds. That was good. Another rookie that made his preseason debut was Tyleik Williams, and he, as we've talked about, is pretty much exactly as advertised. Very solid against the run. He was eating double teams almost every single play. There was the one standout play where he ate a double team, and because of that, the guard wasn't able to climb to the second level, which meant that Zach Cunningham was able to just lay a big hit in the middle and come in pretty much unblocked. And then there's another play where Tyleik just basically jumped around the guard like immediately at the snap and forced the running back inside to Keith Cooper Jr. And that was a nice play. Like the pass rush was a little funny to watch at times. Admittedly, there was a few reps where Tyleik got caught trying to do a little too much. There was one play where he got shoved. He was on the left side of the defense, right side of the offensive line, and he tried to make a move to the inside, and he got pushed all the way behind the other defensive tackle, and then he had to regain his balance. There's another one where he got pushed so far towards the tackle that he accidentally made the edge defender do a stunt. So the pass rush is a little bit of an adventure, but he has a good ability to collapse the pocket. And like when he sets his feet and is just doing a bull rush, he can do that. When he's trying to add some other pass rush moves outside of that, work in progress. But as a run defender, very high floor run defender, and he does a lot of these little things that free up the rest of the defense to look better in their jobs.
Right, and that is kind of what you almost wonder if we talked about it when he was drafted. Is he going to be another Lee McNeil? Now you kind of wonder, could he be another DJ Reader, right? In terms of like that was kind of what the role he was performing. It's why when you look at Pro Football Focus grading, they're never particularly high on nose tackles because nose tackles aren't really doing anything that is super gradable. They don't have a ton of they don't even generally have many tackles, let alone things like pressures. But you're soaking up defenders, or you're soaking up offensive linemen to allow your fellow defenders to get easier matchups. And in a world where you come into week 1 this season with Tyleek and DJ Reader playing together in the middle of a line, it's going to create a lot of opportunities for not just Aiden Hutchinson to feast, because he's still going to get chipped. He's still going to get doubled, doesn't matter. But like the biggest beneficiary of that in an Aiden Hutchinson with those two sort of, both kind of nose tackle sorts of guys in the middle is going to be Marcus Davenport, or whoever else is playing on that other side. That person's going to get a lot of opportunities this year. And that alone could help the Lions pass rush. So even if Tyleek isn't necessarily doing it himself, he's allowing and giving space for other people to improve as pass rushers.
Yeah, and in the run game, it's going to just be so much easier for guys like Jack Campbell, Alex Anzalone, Derek Barnes if they're able to get into these gaps cleanly without getting picked up by blockers, it's just going to lead to more run stuffs at the line. And we know that the Lions are putting an emphasis on getting back to being a elite run defense first, so that they can pin it's the whole, you got to stop the run to earn the right to rush the passer on third down. That's what they believe. That's what they're getting back to. Aside from that, do you have any other notes from Friday's game that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, a couple of guys to mention here. I didn't see a ton of this, but live, but I also wasn't necessarily studying the interior of the defensive line. But other people noted that they thought Broderick Martin had a decent game.
Yep.
I'd have to look over the tape to say that. But any mentions of signs of life in other people's anecdotes from the game is a plus at this stage for him. Nate Lynn had a really nice sack. Continuing to build on the practice buzz. Al-Qadim Muhammad got good reviews as well, but I don't know. We've seen what he can do in the NFL. I'm not really that focused on him in a preseason format. He can be a rotational guy in the league. We've seen that. Keith Cooper hype. It was just a good game from the defensive line as a whole. I thought the back seven not as exciting. Zach Cunningham looked solid. That's a guy that could be a useful depth linebacker, and then a couple more big Rock Ya-Sin hits. We're starting to come accustomed to that. He's been one of the stories for me. Underrated signing at the time, but he's going to have a real role on this defense.
He had one really good play where he was lined up as the deep safety, and I think it was like a 3rd and 4 or something, and the Falcons quarterback just dumped it off for the check down, and Ya-Sin was just blitzing from that deep safety spot, and he got a tackle right near the line. So that was a good play. Like to see the physicality from Rock Ya-Sin. Broderick Martin, I will mention, there was one play that I saw. I didn't study him too intensely, but there was one flash I saw where he was lined up as the one tech, like on the left shoulder of the center, and he got so far to the left side of the line that the running back had to cut back right into him, like who was pushing the center back, and the edge defender. I forget who it was, but those kind of flashes from Broderick, I see them. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why the Lions drafted him, because he's got so much explosiveness from that nose tackle spot. I just need to see more from it, and it's really funny that the Lions could conceivably go into the year since Ali McNeil's out, Makai Wingo might not be ready for week 1, and Onwuzurike is obviously out for the year, where it's just DJ Reader, Tyleek, Roy Lopez, and Broderick Martin. Is like, here's 4 basically nose tackles that are just going to soak up the interior and just have fun trying to block all of them at once.
That would be something.
Who needs a 3-tech?
Broderick Martin versus left tackle would be snaps for the ages. What does that even look like?
Yeah, I don't even want to know. Like, a Broderick Martin trying to set the edge would be quite a sight, but I digress. Aside from that, we do have to talk a little bit about some injury updates that we've gotten over the last week and a bit. First of all, the Lions now have 6 players that are on season-ending IR or PUP. That is Levi Onwuzurike, who I just mentioned, Dan Jackson, who we talked about last episode, Justin Huron, Colby Sorsdal, and Kenny Yeboah, who all just got added in the last couple days. And then a more significant one that we talked about as an injury update, but now we know he's out for the year, Ennis Rakestraw, who is we talked about he's quickly becoming another one of these high draft picks that has all the talent in the world but can't stay on the field. He just cannot stay healthy, man, and it's not necessarily his fault, but the best ability is availability, and when you're not available, it's really tough to develop, especially as a corner. We know how injured defensive backs get, but I had a lot of hopes for him to be the primary backup corner, and now, thank God, Rock Ya-Sin has stepped up and been so good in camp, because now we at least have some trust in the depth at corner a little bit more, but gutted for Rakestraw.
Yeah, really unfortunate situation. I was hoping that it would be just a few months, and then he could potentially come back November, December, something like that, but this was pretty much the worst case, and it is a getting late early situation. I mean, next year now is going to be his career kind of on the ropes, which is unfortunate because, again, this is a guy that was talking about starting in game 2 of his NFL career. So it just really, really sucks for him, and there's not much else you can say about it.
Yep, and then guys that are still on injury lists in some form or fashion: Miles Frazier still in PUP, Ali McNeil still in PUP, Makai Wingo still in PUP, Josh Pascal, Malcolm Rodriguez, and Khalil Dorsey. All a few of those guys are working their way back, but it's just gonna be time. And then we are recording this on Wednesday, August 13th. Guys that did not practice today against the Dolphins in joint practices: Tim Patrick with an undisclosed injury, Dominic Lovett, who is supposed to be out another 5 or 6 days. It was about a 2-week injury for him last week that he picked up. Tom Kennedy, undisclosed, Tristan Colin, Pat O'Connor, Kirby Joseph, and obviously Maurice Norris, as we talked about off the top of the show. And then Keaton Sutherland and DiCaprio Boodle also left practice early today. And then the guys that returned: Sione Vaki, who I'm really eager to see him in the preseason. I want to see the development at running back. Ahmad Hassanin, who had a lower leg injury that he picked up the other day, but he seems to be all right. And then Terrion Arnold is back on the field, but only in individual drills, not quite ready for team drills at this time. So speaking of the joint practices today, we've kind of teased that the Lions were dominant, and I kind of just want to take this chance to laugh at the Dolphins a bit, because their beat reporters were complaining about the Bears last week because they joined practices with the Bears, and they were like, oh, they're hitting the Bears too aggressively, and the guys are getting slammed down to the field. The Bears are the dirtiest team that I've ever seen. And now they come into Detroit, and obviously Detroit is as physical a team as there is. And I kind of just am curious, are the Dolphins just going to be one of these sneaky teams that's going to end up with a top 5 pick?
I kind of wonder about that. I haven't looked at all the rosters, but I saw someone listing teams that could be in the Arch Manning sweepstakes, assuming things play out that way. Whoever the quarterback is, we'll say that.
Saints.
And the Dolphins were, yeah, the Dolphins were listed in that article, and I was kind of like, yeah, I could kind of see it. And I don't know, they had some bad vibes last year, and the Tua health situation is always questionable, but not a good performance. I know that I think Tyreek Hill was not playing in the game in the practices today,
Yeah.
so that's a little part of it. But By all accounts, it was a really comprehensive beatdown, which doesn't fully explain it. Most of the beat writers sounded like they were watching the defense for the Lions against the Miami offense, and not the other way around. Although it sounded like Amon-Ra St. Brown had a lot of touchdowns in the other practice, but it's been a story of camp really about how well the Lions defense is playing. That they've been bottling up and winning most practices against the offense, and then apparently really laid the boom today. So that's really exciting, especially with Terrion Arnold not participating in the practice today. And once you get him back in the mix, given how much hype there was before his hamstring tweak, it could be a really exciting time. I mean, defenses are usually better than the offenses in training camp to start out, but just really good vibes seem to be coming out of the Lions defense at the moment in training camp.
And we should mention on the offense too. It sounds like this was the best day the offense has had in training camp, which there were some concerns creeping up about like the Lions offense not progressing as well as Dan Campbell and like the Lions want it to. And whenever that sort of report happens, everyone around the league starts to be like, oh, so something's going on with this team. And obviously people are very quick to be like, oh, Ben Johnson's gone, the Lions lost their magic. And I'm sure I think we can start to be like, okay, see, this offense is still going to be very good. I think it should be more of a compliment to the defense at this point that they've played so well. I know that there was reports of like a Hutch rule being introduced at practice because he was winning too many reps, that they were like, okay, just ignore when Hutch gets to the quarterback because we have to be able to practice. So, I mean, look, a lot of excitement for both sides of the ball. I'm very curious to see what Kelvin Shepherd is able to do with this defense, how it's going to differ from Aaron Glenn. But speaking of Aaron Glenn, I'm actually very curious to see these Jets and Dolphins matchups this year because that is such a finesse versus heart kind of matchup between the Jets and Dolphins. Like the Dolphins have a lot of talent, but man, Aaron Glenn is going to have those guys ready to go. So I think if you get like a good November, or actually I don't even know when they play, but the game in MetLife between the Dolphins and Jets is going to be a good one. Aside from that, though, not too many practice notes that we're going to go over because we talked about in the past that it's not worth getting too deep into the weeds of these camp reports. It's more so taking what is happening multiple times, like the trends that are happening over a couple days or couple weeks of camp versus one-offs like, oh, this guy had a good day, all that. So let's go ahead and talk about Saturday's game against the Miami Dolphins and what are we looking for. Obviously, number one is Hendon Hooker. We talked about that at length. So let's say aside from the quarterback, like the backup quarterback duel, what are you most looking forward to in this game on Saturday?
Most looking forward to is an interesting question because we don't necessarily know what the participation will be in the preseason game, but potentially more of that defensive line, like seeing more of Nate Lynn and the Keith Cooper, and they've got some decisions to make on the bubble of the roster there with the defensive line. So I would say that's something I'm definitely paying attention to. Honestly, more Giovanni Manu snaps is something I'd be paying attention to. The biggest thing I want to see, though, is I want to see fewer Craig Reynolds snaps. I didn't get that on the record with the Falcons game. It was something we talked about last week after the Hall of Fame game. Still the case now. Too many. He's too important of a player to be playing this much in preseason. And I tweeted about it at one point. I got a like from someone called Coach Reynolds, who appeared to be working for the college that Craig Reynolds went to. I don't know if that's his father, but just put that out there. I don't get it. I don't really understand. I know Vaki's injured, but like, especially Reynolds getting that hospital ball on that wheel route from Hooker. Like, no. We don't need that. Put some of these other guys out there. We need to get into the season healthy, and he's an important running back 3. So that's something I definitely want to see.
Yeah, and I'll complement that by saying, like I said a few minutes ago, Sione Vaki, I want to see because we haven't seen him in the preseason so far. So that's a guy that's going to make the roster. And compared to, there's so many running backs that they can give snaps to. I'm not too worried about finding a guy to give the ball to in preseason, but Vaki is someone who we know he's going to be on the team, so I want to see how he's progressed at running back. And weirdly enough, this is a bit of a weird one, but I want to see fewer special teams penalties because, oh my lord, the special teams has been so uncharacteristically bad in the preseason so far. In the first quarter against the Falcons, it was like back-to-back kickoffs that they took penalties. There was another like on a punt. Like, I just need to see them play some cleaner snaps on special teams. I know that it's not the regulars that are going to be on special teams, but a lot of these guys that are competing for jobs, that is going to be their role. So want to see them look a little bit cleaner on that. And then, Rocky Sin, we talked about a little bit. I would like to see more Ahmad Hassanin because he's been very steady so far, but I want to see him finish plays a little bit at a bit of a better rate. He's doing a good job collapsing the pocket, generating pressure, stopping the run, setting the edge, all that. I just want to see him do a little bit better of a job disengaging at when either the ball carrier is coming towards him or when he's rushing the quarterback, and just get a hand on the quarterback. Doesn't have to be a sack, but get a couple QB hits, get a couple tackles on a running back, just finish plays at a bit of a higher rate. Aside from that, Alex, I know it's been a bit of a shorter show similar to last week, but is there anything else that you want to touch on before we wrap?
I guess building off your point about the special teams, we definitely want to see a crisper performance just in the turnover department. That's obviously been mostly quarterbacks to this point, but just a game where that's not getting in the way, especially early in the game. Just crisper football, more dialed in. And this one's at home, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Because their first two have been away from home. So be a treat for the home fans. Maybe let Isaac TeSlaa put on a little bit of a show for the home crowd, maybe in the first half of the game. But there's not too much to talk about in training camp. And just kind of checking in. Hope everyone stays healthy. They've taken some hits in that department so far, but outside of Rakestraw, nothing too serious in terms of players they were kind of counting on. Hopefully that stays the same when we talk next week.
Absolutely. And of course, as we mentioned, obviously the biggest thing to look for is the quarterback play. Can Hendon Hooker have a better game at home? Can Kyle Allen build off of his momentum that he now has? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. That game is Saturday at 1 Eastern. So nice and early on Saturday, so be sure to check that one out. That'll be a fun one. And aside from that, that is going to be it for this week's episode. If you've made it this far, make sure to leave a review on podcasting platforms. Follow the show. If you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe with notifications turned on. You can find me on Twitter at ZachPayne41, Alex at Alex_Drain, and the podcast at Payne and Drain. We'll see you guys next week. Cheers.